Hey, what is up, team? Brandon here from Go Headquarters, coming at you with the full breakdown for today's workout. Today is all about the hip hinge. So a lot of hinging today, working the hams, the glutes, the low back in a couple different ways. So we're gonna kick things off with 400-meter burden carry. What I need you guys to do here is find an object or a combination of objects and basically go for a 400-meter walk. So this should not be a run. It shouldn't be so light and easy that you can run with your object or objects. So in here, I would have you guys maybe grab a heavy gel ball and do the front rack carry with just minimal time of shouldering it, things like that. What I wouldn't do is just grab a light pair of dumbbells and do an easy farmer's carry. That's not enough of a burden. So I want whatever you grab is, I want you to consider it to be an actual burden. So maybe you're wearing a heavy backpack plus carrying some things, carrying it, awkwardly in the front, on the shoulder, on the hips. You're gonna have to move it around because it is so much of a burden, okay? So give me 400 meters with that. Then we will move on. 3 rounds. We're gonna do 15 good mornings and 10 overhead squats. We could do this a couple different ways. I want to demo this with the band today, but you could absolutely do this stuff with a bar, like a white bar or a weighted barbell. So I'm going to take my pull-up band. I'm going to demo with a blue one in this case. What I'm going to do is put this on my upper back. So this is going to be kind of across my shoulder blades, but below the cap of my shoulder. And I've got my hands choked up nice and tight to my armpits, and I've already got that band under some good tension. Then I'm going to bend over and I'm going to get my feet on this thing about hip width apart, getting everything as even as I can. Then I'll stand up. So now I've still got my hands tied up to my armpits. I'm going to turn sideways so you guys can see my perfect hip hinge. So keeping my knees stiff and my back stiff, I'm going to hinge over from the hips. So at this point, I'm feeling a big hamstring pull. Now I'm going to squeeze my hamstrings and butt to stand back up. So this is just like our good morning with a barbell or a white bar, whatever the case may be. But using the band is cool because we are adding tension to our good morning as opposed to just using a white bar. Now I can also use the band for my overhead squat. So I'm pretty much gonna max this thing out. I don't really have any tail available on either end. I'm gonna come up here and lock this thing out overhead, and then I'm gonna sit back and down with my knees out, and I'm keeping this band up above basically my midfoot or my heel line. So I don't want the band, just like any overhead squat, I don't want that to dive out in front of you or dive behind you or shrink down. Those are all considered faults in the overhead squat. So 3 rounds, 15 good mornings, 10 overhead squats. Then we can get rid of that until we need it again here momentarily. So for strength today, guys, we're gonna do some deadlifting. Next on the agenda, 5 rounds, 12 sumo style deadlifts, followed by 20 calf raises just for accessory work. So our sumo deadlift, I'm gonna demo this. I'm gonna use this kettlebell today, but you guys can use a barbell, you can use a pair of dumbbells, whatever you got, right? So I'm going to take a wider than shoulder width stance. Normally when we deadlift, we're hip to shoulder width, probably more hip width. So this is intentionally getting significantly wider than that. So that's the stance I'm gonna be taking. My toes are pointing out further than they normally would. So we're maybe at 11 and 1 o'clock. So now I'm gonna turn to the side so you guys can see my hinging and my low back. So the weight is between my feet. I'm gonna come down and get my grips on this thing. So just like our deadlift, our hips are just above our knees, but below our shoulders. I've got my feet flat, and I'm gonna squeeze my hams, my butt, my low back to pull this thing up. On the descent, I'm going to hinge over and then bend the knees. So There is a hinge here, guys, and notice how deep I'm keeping this kettlebell back between my feet. I am not letting this thing come out in front of me because that's gonna pull me out of position, right? So we're gonna do 12 sumo deadlifts. Don't get caught up when we use something other than a barbell. It's easy to get caught up just squatting, which would maybe look like this. See how I'm not hinging anymore? I'm just doing a squat. So you're gonna feel that quite differently than if you do the initial technique that I just talked about. So for every set of 12 that you do there, we're gonna go do 20 calf raises, on a step. I'm gonna use my plate here, and I'm just gonna balance with my white bar. So I'm on the edge of my step or curb or whatever it is with the balls in my feet. I'm gonna get a good stretch at the bottom, and I'm gonna try to stand all the way up on the toes at the top. So I'm gonna do 20 of these, not rushing, just getting good time under tension. Now I wanna go over one other thing on this dumbbell, or this kettlebell, excuse me. So let's say all I've got is this red kettlebell, and I'm just a hell of a lot stronger than that, and I can lift more weight. But I do have this band, so this band can add weight to this kettlebell. So what I'm gonna do, and I'll demo this from the front so you can see what's going on here. I'm gonna feed this through the grip. Now what I'm gonna do, is I'm gonna stand on this at the midfoot on each side. So I'll get my stance that we just talked about. So make sure this band is nice and secure. So now, when I go to do my deadlift, boom, I have to pull that band up with it. So that's gonna add a few pounds to my deadlift, even though I don't have a heavier kettlebell. So get creative with the gear that you've got, guys, okay? So again, 5 rounds, 12 sumo deadlifts, followed by 20 calf raises. Then we're gonna move on to another deadlift. We're gonna do 4 rounds, 8 per leg, single leg, stiff leg deadlift, and then 12 pike crunches. So our single leg, or a stiff leg deadlift, would just kind of be like this. So my legs are stiff, but I'm still doing that hip hinge with my lumbar curve visible, chest out, shoulders back, and there's not really a depth standard because most people round out when they try to go too low. So we've got a stiff leg deadlift. How do we make it a single leg? Looks something like this. So we want to balance on one leg, and then the leg that's lifting, ideally, it is in line with our spine as we do that same pelvic tilt or that hip hinge. Okay, you guys see that? So I'm working this hamstring, but I've got to keep my right butt cheek tight so that that leg stays straight with my spine. So I'm going to do 8 on this leg, and then of course switch sides and do 8 on the other side. Now we can absolutely carry weight on this move. I could use my kettlebell again and carry that kettlebell. I could use a pair of 2 dumbbells and hold that down here. I could use a band underneath my grounded foot. That one's a little tricky on this move, but still. So 8 on the left leg, 8 on the right leg, and then we need to go do 12 pike crunches to finish the round. So we did some pike crunches last week, but we did them 1 leg at a time. Today, we're gonna do the 2-leg version, which is a lot harder, so be ready. So I'm sitting in kind of seated forward fold. I'm gonna lock my knees and point my toes. Now I'm gonna take my hands and put them outside my legs, and I'm just gonna kind of put my fingers on the ground. Now, the further my fingers are forward, the harder this is. The closer they are to me, the easier. Now the job is to do a leg lift, basically, or what's called a pike crunch. But notice I'm keeping my knees locked and my toes pointed, and I'm under control. I'm tapping the ground. I'm not like throwing my legs up and then falling, okay? So the only thing moving is actually my hip, okay? So if that's too easy, I just need to inch my fingers forward until I feel like I'm really struggling. So now I'm working pretty darn hard right there, and my range of motion got cut short. So that's about where I would want to live there. So for quality, 4 rounds, 8 per leg, single leg, stiff leg deadlift. Weighting is kind of optional, but I want you guys to get strong, so add weight as needed. And then 12 pike crunches using the double leg technique. So when you're done with 4 rounds of that, we're gonna cash out with some L-sit time. So our pike crunch just did a beautiful job of prepping us for our L-sit. So I'm gonna cheat. I've got 2 boxes here that match. You guys need to get creative. You need a pair of matching lawn chairs, or stable, dining room chairs, or, the corner of a countertop, or anything that will support your body weight and be nice and stable underneath your hands. So I am going to support myself with my upper body. I'm gonna bring my legs off the ground gently. Now, maybe this is my L-sit, which is just a bent knee version, so that's easier. But if I'm pretty good at these, I'm gonna try to extend my legs, point my toes, just like we were in the pike crunch a moment ago. We're just going to hold that position for as long as we can. And our job is to accumulate 2 minutes worth of time in that position today. So my usual rule of thumb is that if someone is surpassing like a 15-second barrier on the L-sit, I am maybe questioning their intensity, okay? So most people, when they're really working extremely hard in the L-sit, don't even have 15 seconds. They're gonna be in like a 10 to 15 second window there. So keep that in mind. If you retreat to an easier position, like I could hold that knee tuck for probably 2 minutes unbroken, but that kind of defeats the purpose, right? I want you guys to elevate the intensity on that. So for every break that you take, you're gonna need some time off just to rejuice a little bit for the next attempt on the L-sit. So let's put that time to use wisely. We're gonna do 30 seconds worth of seated straddle. So sitting on the ground, just take a straddle position, basically do the splits, and then just casually forward fold. So I'm allowing my back to round out. I'm gonna feel a stretch through my groin, through my hamstrings, through my low back. And I'm not forcing this. I'm gonna be in this position a lot actually, because it's gonna take us, you know, we're expecting what, 8 sets of L-sits? So we're probably gonna do about 8 sets worth of time here. So 30 seconds here, then go back, add some more time to your L-sit, come back 30 seconds here. So just keep track of your L-sit time until you accumulate 2 minutes. So that ends the workout, finishes the workout for the day. Sorry, I'm losing my words here. Hit that hard, guys. Stay fit, stay safe out there. We'll see you next time.